Program is intended for listeners who are blind, have low vision, or have another print disability, which makes reading, holding a book, or turning a page difficult or impossible. The content is copyrighted by the respective publishers. For more information, please visit us on the web at nfradioreading.org.
Hello, this is Jean, and for the next hour, I'll be reading from the Sunday, February 8th, 2026 issue of the New York Times Business section on Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service. Romance makes way for chatbots to write its stories, by Alexandra Alter. As novelists churn out pages with AI's help, not everyone is feeling the love. Last February, the writer Coral Hart began an experiment. She started using artificial intelligence programs to quickly churn out romance novels. Over the next 8 months, she created 21 pen names and published dozens of novels. In the process, she discovered the limitations of using chatbots to write about sex and love. Some programs refused to write explicit content, which violated their policies. Others, like Grok and Novel AI, produced graphic sex scenes, but the consummation often lacked emotional nuance and felt rushed and mechanical. Claude delivered the most sexy, elegant prose, but was terrible at banter. "You are going to get hammering hearts and thumping chests and stupid stuff," said Ms. Hart, who lives in Cape Town. "At the end of every sex scene, everyone will end up tangled in the sheets." Chatbots were also bad at building sexual tension, the slow burn, will they or won't they plot lines that romance readers crave. When told to craft a love scene, the bots usually jumped straight to the obvious narrative climax. Ms. Hart found Anthropic's chatbot to be the most versatile and developed ways around Claude's prudishness. Among her techniques, feeding Claude very specific instructions and a list of kinks and stressing that sex was not gratuitous but crucial to the plot. A longtime romance novelist who has been published by Harlequin and Mills and Boon, Ms. Hart was always a fast writer. Working on her own, she released 10 to 12 books a year under 5 pen names on top of ghostwriting. But with the help of AI, Ms. Hart can publish books at an astonishing rate. Last year, she produced more than 200 romance novels in a variety of subgenres, from dark mafia romances to sweet teen stories, and self-published them on Amazon. None were blockbusters, but collectively they sold around 50,000 copies, earning Ms. Hart 6 figures. While we spoke over Zoom, an AI program she was running ingested her prompts and outline and produced a full novel about a rancher who falls for a city girl running away from her past. It took about 45 minutes. Ms. Hart has become an AI evangelist. Through her author coaching business, Plot Prose, she's taught more than 1,600 people how to produce a novel with artificial intelligence, she said. She's rolling out her proprietary AI writing program, which can generate a book based on an outline in less than an hour and costs $80 to $250 a month. But when it comes to her current pen names, Ms. Hart doesn't disclose her use of AI because there's still a strong stigma around the technology, she said. Coral Hart is one of the early now retired pseudonyms, and it's the name she uses to teach AI-assisted writing. She requested anonymity because she still uses her real name for some publishing and coaching projects. She fears that revealing her AI use would damage her business for that work. But she predicts attitudes will soon change and is adding 3 pen names that will be openly AI-assisted, she said. The way Ms. Hart sees it, romance writers must either embrace artificial intelligence or get left behind. "If I can generate a book in a day, you need 6 months to write a book. Who's going to win that race?" she said. Romance at the vanguard. Whenever the publishing industry is rocked by a technological shift, it usually hits romance first. Romance writers are prolific and their readers are voracious, so they've been early adopters of ebook subscription services, self-publishing, social media networking, and online serial releases. Romance is also the publishing industry's best-selling genre. It accounts for more than 20% of all adult fiction print sales, according to Circana Bookscan, and has continued to grow in recent years, even as an overall adult fiction sales have stagnated. The genre may be especially vulnerable to disruption by AI for all the reasons that readers love it. Romance relies on familiar narrative formulas, like the guarantee of an HEA, or happily ever after, ending. And romance novels are often built around popular plot tropes, like enemies to lovers or forced proximity that can be fed into a chatbot. AI remains contentious in the romance community. A vocal contingent of readers oppose its use and are quick to call out suspected transgressions. Furor erupted on social media last year when 2 romance authors published works with AI prompts accidentally left in. "You're an opportunist hack using a theft machine," the fantasy writer Rebecca Cruden wrote in an expletive-laced message on Blue Sky. "Many readers seem to share her distaste," she said in an interview. "The comment I kept seeing is, 'Why should we pay for something when you couldn't be bothered to make?'" Without such obvious slip-ups, it can be hard to spot AI-generated romance. Amazon asks authors who use its Kindle self-publishing platform to disclose if they relied on AI, but does not require writers to include any public disclaimers on their books. "The AI detector can be gotten around," said Krista Desire, vice president and editorial director of Bloom Books, a romance imprint that often signs successful self-published authors. "It will become undetectable at a certain point." Setting the scenes. In early December, Ms. Hart woke up shortly before 2 a.m. in Cape Town to teach a class on how to write sex scenes with artificial intelligence. Around 20 people from around the world logged on for the course, Write Dirty with Me. Early on, Ms. Hart issued a cautionary note. "If you're expecting a perfect sex scene from AI on the first draft, lower your expectations a lot," she said, warning that the pearl-clutching restrictions barring X-rated material on some popular AI programs posed a challenge. Ms. Hart shared a variety of prompts that can coax a chatbot to set aside its reservations, like telling the AI that the sex was an essential part of the narrative arc. Awkward or repetitive prose presented another pitfall. Left to their own devices, chatbots will default to odd or euphemistic phrasing, Ms. Hart said, noting that an AI program had recently written "his turgid manhood" to describe the character's erection. To prevent the program from overusing its favorite words, including shiver, unravel, tangled, and exploded, Ms. Hart recommended compiling an ick list of phrases and prohibiting the chatbot from using them. She also advised the class to propose creative locations for romantic trysts. Otherwise, the chatbot would resort to vanilla sex in the bedroom or shower. She shared a suggested list of settings for sex scenes, including a winery fermentation tank, a stalled ski lift, a rooftop greenhouse, a horse stable, and the back row of a classic car show. And she recommended students give the AI a detailed inventory of sexual kinks. Her proposals included common fetishes like dirty talk, blindfolding, and light spanking, and more unusual ones like using a dead spouse's old silk robe as a restraint during bondage. "Be shameless," she said. "It's not going to judge you." Conveying human intimacy. It's impossible to gauge how many romance novels are produced with artificial intelligence. Many authors don't reveal they use chatbots for fear of alienating readers. A survey of more than 1,200 authors across genres showed that about a third were using generative AI for plotting, outlining, or writing, and the majority said they did not disclose their AI use to readers, according to BookBub, a book discovery site that released the poll last May. Even some authors who publicly oppose the technology are secretly signing up for Ms. Hart's classes, she said. The rapid incursion of AI-generated stories is rattling some in the romance business. Publishers and authors worry that books by real writers are getting lost in the sea of digital slop as AI-enabled novels flood the market. It bogs down the publishing ecosystem that we all rely on to make a living, said Marie Force, a best-selling romance novelist who doesn't use AI and was disturbed to learn that more than 80 of her novels had been used to train Anthropic's chatbot. It makes it difficult for newer authors to be discovered because the swamp is teeming with crap. Many fans are also put off by the notion of computer-generated love stories. Zoe Mahler, an avid romance reader who leads 2 book clubs at the Ripped Bodice, a romance bookstore in Brooklyn, said she would never knowingly pick up an AI-generated novel. Romance is about the human connection, and there is nothing more human than being vulnerable and falling in love, she said. Why would I want to read a story written by a machine trying to emulate that? Even writers who've embraced AI agree that it's often bad at conveying human intimacy. It doesn't understand the human experience, said Sonia Rompati, a psychologist who lives in Athens. It will tell you in a biological way what goes where, but it will not add any emotion. Ms. Rompati began writing romance novels with the help of artificial intelligence in 2024 using the program Sudowrite. As a plus-size woman, Ms. Rompati wanted to see heavier-set heroines she could relate to in romance fiction. AI supercharged her writing process, enabling her to produce 10 novels in a little over a year, including The Billionaire's Curvy Match and Curves to Own, Pregnant by the Billionaire. But while the program made writing faster and easier, it was terrible at describing a plus-size heroine, perhaps because there are so few in mainstream fiction, which made many AI programs were trained on. Whenever Ms. Rompati's curvy protagonist, an event planner named Sienna, was in a scene, the AI constantly alluded to her weight, for example, noting that a chair groaned when she sat down. When you make a point that someone is plus size, it will exaggerate, as somebody is suddenly humongous, she said. This was especially vexing in erotic scenes where the heroine was supposed to be feeling confident and sexy. Ms. Rompati wound up revising those passages to make her protagonist seem like a real person and not a caricature, she said. People don't read romance to see what bodies do, she said. They read it to feel seen. A ragged prayer. AI-generated sex scenes tend to rely on generic erotic language with waves of ecstasy crashing over everyone. But sometimes the chatbots get fancy and, like human writers, fall in love with their own florid prose. In several romances written with AI programs, a peculiar metaphor recurs. In the throes of passion, the hero utters his lover's name like a ragged prayer. In Sidney Marsh's Bridesmaids in Bourbon, the phrase pops up when Beau, the ruggedly handsome owner of a distillery, and Taylor, a stressed-out maid of honor, have sex in a gazebo before her sister's wedding. Taylor, my name was a ragged prayer on his lips. A more tortured variation occurs during a sex scene in Dana Winston's Flight Path to Forever, a romance novel about a flight nurse who falls for the helicopter rescue pilot. Sloane, her name came out ragged, prayer rough. It also shows up in Ms. Rompati's romance series. In Curves to Own, Sienna's billionaire lover says her name with reverence. Her name was a ragged prayer on his lips, Sienna. In a later love scene, he again says her name like a ragged prayer, a desperate vow, and then in a slight twist, he calls out her name like a jagged prayer. Ms. Rompati couldn't recall whether AI had written those lines or if she had added them during revisions, but she believes she wrote them herself during editing, she said. Bridesmaids in Bourbon and Flight Path to Forever were published by Future Fiction Press, a new publishing company that produces AI-generated novels. So far, the press has released 19 romance novels that have been downloaded 20,000 times. The writer, Elizabeth Ann West, one of Future Fiction's founders, who came up with the plot of Bridesmaids in Bourbon, believes the audience would be bigger if the books weren't labeled AI. The novels, which are available on Amazon, come with a disclaimer on their product page. This story was produced using author-directed AI tools. If you hide that there's AI, it just sells fine, she said. Ms. West, who also teaches classes on how to write with AI, has gotten blowback from opponents of the technology, including occasional death threats on social media. But she believes that in time, AI-generated fiction will become widespread and popular. Eventually, Ms. West said, readers will not care. You are listening to a reading of articles and features from New York Times Business section on Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service. 1 trillion, the market value of Walmart, the first traditional retailer to reach that level. On Tuesday, Walmart joined a small club of companies, most of them technology giants, worth more than 1 trillion. Walmart, the nation's largest retailer, became the first traditional retailer to hit that valuation. Walmart has grown its business in part through its e-commerce operation, and its low prices have drawn in shoppers in a moment when many of them are worried about their finances. Its stock has outpaced the S&P 500 index, rising more than 24% over the last year. The retailer has been embracing technology, moving its stock listing from the New York Stock Exchange to the NASDAQ, and investing in its online retail arm, Jet.com. In its last quarter, Walmart reported a 27% increase in e-commerce sales. The company has tried to appeal to tech talent, and its headquarters in Bentonville, Arkansas, has amenities that rival Silicon Valley offices. Walmart management was prescient in building out a business model optimized for the moment. Sarah Henry, managing director and portfolio manager at Logan Capital Management, an investment management company, told the New York Times' Kaylin Rohn. Ms. Henry added that Walmart's rebuilding recast their image as much as a technology company as they are a retailer. The $1 trillion valuation came days after John Furner, a longtime Walmart employee who later became president and chief executive of Walmart's U.S. division, became the company's new chief executive. Douglas McMillon, who transformed the company into an Amazon challenger in his 12-year run as chief executive, announced his retirement in November. Annual revenue increased by nearly $200 billion to $681 billion during his tenure. Both Mr. McMillon and Mr. Furner, a native of Arkansas whose father also worked for Walmart, spent their entire careers at the retailer. When athletes are away, home invaders will play. Sports stars' public schedules and social media posts make them particularly vulnerable. By T.M. Brown. Almost everyone in Ohio knew exactly where the rookie quarterback, Shedeur Sanders, was going to be on Sunday, November 16th, and where he wasn't going to be. Mr. Sanders, 24, had an electric college career and landed in Cleveland last year as a backup for the Browns, signing a $4.6 million deal. November 16th was a big day. Mr. Sanders was thrust into his first NFL action against the Baltimore Ravens after the Browns' starting quarterback, Dylan Gabriel, left with an injury. At the same time, 30 miles away, 4 men were robbing his house in Granger Township, a Cleveland suburb. It took them 12 minutes to enter the house through an unlocked door, grab $200,000 worth of designer clothes, sunglasses, and bags, and make their getaway. Mr. Sanders was the latest in a series of professional athletes whose homes had been burglarized while they were out playing in a game. In October of 2024, a band of thieves burgled the homes of Kansas City teammates Patrick Mahomes and Travis Kelce 2 days apart. They also stole a safe full of jewelry and cash from the home of Milwaukee Bucks forward Bobby Portis Jr. while he was playing against the Cleveland Cavaliers. Last night, while I was at work, my home was burglarized, Mr. Portis wrote on X, adding that the thieves took most of my prized possessions. More recent victims include the basketball stars Luka Doncic and Karl Anthony Towns, the Pro Bowl quarterback Joe Burrow, and hockey star Tyler Seguin. When burglars broke into the Los Angeles home of WNBA champion Sabrina Ionescu on December 16th, they left with $60,000 in designer handbags. The day before, the home of the Tennessee Titans defensive tackle Jeffrey Simmons was robbed while he was in California playing the San Francisco 49ers. These athletes possess large quantities of high-value portable items, said Nikos Passis, a professor of criminology at Northeastern University, making them appetizing targets for burglars. And because their work schedules are publicly available ahead of time, everyone knows when they won't be home. A would-be thief simply has to look at a tip-off or kickoff time to get a sense of when the home might be empty or at least vulnerable. But the bigger problem is the disconnect between these athletes' ballooning bank accounts and their investment in security. Their valuables are also kept in residential settings with security that often lags behind their rising wealth and fame, Dr. Passis says. Who are these robbers, and why have they been so successful? Some of the robberies have been linked to organized crime rings. Last year, the FBI charged 7 Chilean men with organizing burglaries at athletes' homes across the United States, including the houses of Mr. Mahomes and Mr. Kelsey, stealing more than $2 million in cash and jewelry. According to an FBI report obtained by ABC News in December of 2024, these syndicates are able to get in and out within minutes. Typically, thieves traffic the stolen goods to fences, who then sell the wares to buyers. In July, a Manhattan pawn shop owner named Dmitry Zinzinski pleaded guilty to running a large-scale fence operation and creating what Police Commissioner Jessica Tisch called a black market pipeline. When the police raided a storage unit belonging to Mr. Zinzinski, they found large quantities of luxury goods and clothing, including high-end handbags, wine, sports memorabilia, jewelry, artwork, and power tools consistent with those commonly used in burglaries and opening safes, according to the U.S. Attorney's Office. League offices have tried to alert players about the growing crime. In a memo to its players, the NFL said burglars often gather information through public records, media reports, and social media, and conduct extensive surveillance on targets, including posing as ground maintenance or joggers. A spokesman from the NFL Players Association said the union had a partnership with the security company ADT to deliver premium service to our players, including dedicated call center. The National Basketball Players Association is also educating players on preventative measures, including offering to connect them with private security firms. But the FBI report also warned that burglars bypass alarm systems, use Wi-Fi jammers to block Wi-Fi connections, and disable devices, cover security cameras, and obfuscate their identities. Sometimes, all they need are a few online clues. Globalization has made athletes' routines and lifestyles extraordinarily transparent, Dr. Passis said. It has lowered the information costs for the criminal groups and made each burglary a high-yield, repeatable opportunity. The NFL memo warned players not to post public images of expensive items, i.e., jewelry, vehicles, or clothing, on social media accounts. In photos on Mr. Sanders' Instagram feed, he can be seen wearing necklaces with rows of pea-sized diamonds. Mr. Zagin's feed flaunts his luxury watches. Social media posts can also reveal where athletes are at a given time, a sense of their home's layout, and where valuables might be stored. The minute you put a picture of your house on Instagram, the bad guys can get the latitude and longitude of your home very quickly, said Kent Moyer, the founder and chief executive of the World Protection Group, a private security firm. Leaks have many sources, though. The Dodgers superstar Shohei Ohtani bought a $7.8 million mansion just north of Los Angeles in May of 2024, only to list it 2 months later after the address was shared by 2 Japanese media outlets. It all starts with privacy, and they need to dedicate themselves to it, said Mr. Moyer, whose clients include professional football, basketball, and baseball players. Disinformation can be part of that strategy. He often recommends using aliases, LLCs, and fake addresses, and to pre-screen any contractors or day laborers. Can't get a pizza delivery there, an Uber driver there, he said. Ironically, the same flaunting of wealth that makes an athlete a target is helping law enforcement capture the thieves. Thus far, the athlete-targeted gangs have fallen victim to their own habits, posting selfies, bragging about their activity, and sometimes posing with the stolen property, said Jay Albanese, a professor of criminal justice at Virginia Commonwealth University. That includes the group of Chilean men charged last year who posted pictures of themselves flashing their ill-gotten goods in a motel room. Not every group is a sophisticated operation. By January, 3 of the 4 men who allegedly burglarized Mr. Sanders' home were arrested in Georgia. According to the police, they had driven a stolen rental car to Ohio, stayed in a motel, and appeared on several surveillance cameras along the way, making it a relatively straightforward investigation for the Medina County Police Department. In some ways, it's amateur hour among thieves, Dr. Albanese said. Of course, the $200,000 worth of goods they stole has not been recovered. Strategies by Jeff Sommer. It's time to rethink the usual advice, but not too much. With red flags in financial markets, investors need to decide whether to ignore them. Dubious records are being set in financial markets. You will have to decide whether you can afford to ignore them. Gold and silver prices are swinging wildly. On January 30th, silver fell more than 25%, its worst day since 1980, giving up some of the fabulous gains of recent weeks. The yo-yoing prices are baffling businesses that rely on precious metals, and they are bewildering many investors. Hard to decipher price signals have cropped up way beyond the commodity markets. In the course of artificial intelligence boom, big tech companies like Nvidia, Microsoft, Alphabet, Amazon, Broadcom, Meta, and Tesla have risen so much that the market has breached a long-standing legal threshold. It is no longer diversified by the Securities and Exchange Commission's traditional standard. The U.S. stock market has become more highly concentrated than it has been since the 1960s, and, as I reported last week, investors are taking greater risks than they may realize. The U.S. bond and money markets are under stress too. The Trump administration's relentless attacks on the Federal Reserve have put them on edge. President Trump's nomination of Kevin M. Warsh as the next Fed chair appears to have calmed those markets and bolstered the dollar initially, but it also raises the possibility of a protracted struggle within the Fed over its framework for setting monetary policy. And bond market tremors in Japan may spill over to fixed income securities in the United States and elsewhere around the globe as they did last year. On top of that, reliable government data is becoming scarcer, but economists and market strategists need it to make sense of the world. The monthly jobs report was delayed again, this time because of the conflict with Congress over the funding of the Department of Homeland Security. The government is functioning, but a partial shutdown could happen again soon if the underlying issues aren't solved. And don't forget U.S. tariffs, which come and go depending on the president's changeable wishes, the response of other governments, and the courts. A widely anticipated Supreme Court decision might, at least temporarily, derail the administration's tariff program, which has contributed to rising prices and disrupted long-standing trade patterns. Anywhere you look, anxiety abounds. Many investors are asking a fundamental question: what should I do about this? The classic answer is, do nothing. Quick responses to market fluctuations tend to be misguided. If you are already sufficiently diversified and have an extended time horizon, your short-term losses may be long-term gains if major markets rebound and you stay the course. But that do-nothing approach assumes several things: that your portfolio has already been set up properly and that your asset allocation is sensible. Under today's circumstances, with the U.S. stock market itself less diversified than it has been in more than 60 years, it's worth re-examining your investing strategy. This is certainly a time to be cautious, but that doesn't mean fleeing global markets. Risk assessment. Asset allocation. Choosing what portion of your holdings should be in major categories like stocks, bonds, and cash is an important investing tool, perhaps the most important. It is much an art as it is a science. The so-called 60-40 portfolio, with 60% stocks and the rest in bonds or cash, is a reasonable starting point, but by no means the last word. Adding stocks when you're prepared to take on greater risk, and adding bonds or cash when you know you will need the money soon, is a simple way of tweaking your asset allocation. Using broad, low-cost index funds for the core of a portfolio is what academic wisdom has suggested for years. I think it still works, with some important caveats. For one thing, both the U.S. stock market and global markets are highly concentrated. In the United States, the top 5 stocks account for more than 25% of the entire market's value. The top 10 account for more than 40%. The ascent of U.S. tech stocks has unbalanced global investing. U.S. stocks now constitute more than 70% of the value of the MSCI World Index. As recently as 1988, the U.S. weighting was less than half that. Spreading your risks through index funds, domestically or globally, isn't a straightforward matter. For another, the U.S. government is changing global politics and markets. Mr. Trump and his appointees are deregulating financial markets, hamstringing regulatory agencies, and using them to further administrative policies like eliminating diversity, equity, and inclusion in the workspace. The president is deliberately altering decades-old trade patterns and international agreements and openly calling for a weaker dollar. Whatever your view on the wisdom of these policies, it's clear that global markets are under tremendous pressure. You will need to decide whether you are willing to follow the markets wherever they lead, which is what broad index fund investment may imply. There are many alternative approaches. You might decide to pick individual stocks or shift to an equally weighted index fund that ignores the valuation judgments of the markets, or entrust your money to an actively managed fund that emphasizes value stocks that have been neglected by the overall market. Countless options exist, but whatever you shift from the core assets in your major markets, realize that you are making a choice. You're basically saying the market's wrong, Rodney Comegis, Chief Investment Officer and Head of Global Equity at Vanguard Capital Management, said in an interview. Everybody who takes an active position is deciding what the market is wrong. I happen to believe that the market is frequently wrong, at least in some ways. Short-term stock prices are often out of whack with economic fundamentals, and these discrepancies can persist over long periods. Market prices fluctuate with disturbing frequency, whether I think they should or not. But arguing with the market over the long haul is a different story. When you buy index funds that mirror the entire market, Mr. Comegis said, we are betting the entire market will go up 5 to 10% annually over a long period of time, given the compounding earnings of U.S. companies and their ability to do well in the capital market system of the United States. What happens to individual stocks and what happens over short periods is less relevant for the long-term market investors. He added that by holding international stocks and bonds, again using index funds, you could lower your risk, but you can't eliminate it, and it will need to decide whether today's market shifts require adjustments in your asset allocation. There's another complication. Shifting your allocations isn't always wise if your investments are held outside tax-sheltered accounts. Selling an enormously appreciating tech stock could lead to huge tax liabilities, so think carefully before acting. The Bogle example. Tax concerns aside, this is a marvelous time to make adjustments because stock markets around the world have performed splendidly over the past year. It's far easier to make changes when you're sitting on handsome profits than when you're flailing for balance during a market crash. John C. Bogle, the Vanguard founder, who made index funds widely available, provided an interesting example in his own life. He used index funds for his core investments, but he wasn't a purist. Jack, as he asked me to call him, told me that he held actively managed funds too, and that he adjusted his own portfolio periodically based on the views of the market. But he was careful to make these changes at the edges, adjusting, say, 5% or 10% of his total allocation by adding bonds when he thought it made sense or taking on more risk with stocks when the timing seemed right. I'm a buy and hold index fund investor primarily, but I make small adjustments myself. Over the past year or so, I've added to my bond and cash holdings, pairing stocks while spreading my modest holdings across global markets. I'm nervous, sure, preparing for trouble and relying mainly on broad index funds while hoping for a rewarding future. 2 volleyball leagues vie, with WNBA as their model, by Jessica Weisberg and Daniel Guillemette. Competitive athletes, celebrity backers, and spectacle are part of the race to create the next major professional women's sport. In the months leading up to its first All-Star game last February, the staff of the Pro Volleyball Federation was worn thin. Even for established leagues, All-Star games are a headache to plan, and as a brand new league, PVF had to conceive the entire event from scratch. The match would be airing on CBS, the first time a major U.S. network could carry a professional game. How would PVF get viewers to stick around, not just to the end of the match, but with the sport? Landing a random sports celebrity seemed like PBF's strategy to hook potential fans. The league had made an offer to the former National Football League player Rob Gronkowski to host the match. He had a big following and a stage presence, but it was like asking Simone Biles to host a men's lacrosse tournament. On a video call to discuss the plans, Leonard Armido, a longtime sports marketing executive and a consultant for PVF, urged the board of directors to try something else. Nobody's going to tune in to watch Gronk, jump around, he said. They're going to tune in because it's a Pro Volleyball Federation All-Star match, the first ever women's professional All-Star match. They should consider other options, he argued. There's a lot of volleyball dads, Mr. Armada said. LeBron James, Jamie Foxx. These are the kind of people we need to try and get because they love volleyball and they have daughters. Gronk didn't work out. But the league ended up hiring different celebrity hosts with no obvious connection to volleyball either. Jalen Rose, the former NBA player, and Shawn Johnston East, the former Olympic gymnast. The 8,000-person venue in Indianapolis was nearly full, and more than 400,000 people watched at home. The broadcast, in other words, was a success. But would the league be one? When PVF started in 2024, it was the only traditional professional women's volleyball league in the United States, but by its sophomore season, PVB had a competitor, League One Volleyball, or LOVB. Both leagues' new seasons started last month. The competition is down to 2 leagues, a relief for those in the sport. Last year, there was a possibility of a 3rd league entering as a fold. Everyone involved in volleyball acknowledged that America cannot sustain multiple leagues. The business of sports is much like a sport itself. There can be only one winner. At one point, there were 2 major football leagues, 2 major basketball leagues, and 2 major hockey leagues. All of these stories ended the same way, with one league swallowed by the other. Hoping for even one successful pro league might seem overly optimistic. Major League Volleyball, which started in the 1980s, lasted less than 3 years. But industry analysts say that volleyball, which is popular abroad, has the bones of a sport that could become, if not the national pastime, then a national pastime. In 2014, volleyball surpassed basketball as the most popular team sport for high school girls. A 2023 college match in Lincoln, Nebraska, drew 92,003 people, making it the best attended women's sporting event in history. Viewers appeared to be tuning in on television, too. Beach volleyball is among the most watched Summer Olympic sports, and viewership of the 2025 NCAA indoor volleyball season was up 36% from the year before, after several years of steady climb. Boosters hope volleyball can be the next WNBA, though both leagues are quick to say they don't expect this to happen right away. The WNBA was founded almost 30 years ago and only recently began to regularly sell out games. It has yet to turn a profit. It also benefits from its relationship with the NBA. Volleyball, on the other hand, is a test case of what happens when the women's sport comes first without a male counterpart. The leagues will have to persuade people to care when they might not understand the sport's rules or lingo. But if they do manage to build volleyball into a major league sport, hundreds of opportunities will open for women who, until now, had to leave the country if they wanted to play and make a career out of the game they love. And the leagues would be creating not just a new business category, but a new cultural force. We intend to be the last one standing, said Scott Gorsland, the co-chair of PVF's board. LOVB, of course, has the same plan. A culture war. The two leagues have taken drastically different approaches to building a culture. LOVB, pronounced love with a silent B, has attracted a number of celebrity investors, including Kevin Durant, Chelsea Handler, Amy Schumer, and Billie Jean King. In July, LOVB announced its partnership with Kim Kardashian's loungewear company Skims. I will never forget the day when I saw the images of that Nebraska-Omaha game and realized that we've been sleeping on this, said Jens Greed, the chief executive and co-founder of Skims, referencing the college game in Lincoln with a record-setting attendance. The partnership with LOVB followed. The league also has a multi-million-dollar deal with Adidas, which designs its uniforms and merchandise, including a Volleyball is the Next Major Sport League hoodie. LOVB's business strategy is inspired by the European soccer model, where professional teams commonly have a youth sports arm. LOVB operates more than 75 youth clubs. Instead of a draft, teams are managed by a central office, and the league executives build the teams with the goal of distributing talent in a fair and equitable way. Then there's the branding. Each LOVB team is named after its city. LOVB Houston, LOVB Atlanta, and has an abstract logo. The league described them as unique marks built from 2 or 3 interconnected letter forms that are recognizable but not necessarily readable. Rosie Spalding, president of LOVB's professional league, argues that its true advantage is neither its celebrity backers nor its built-in youth audience. It's that the league tends to recruit more experienced athletes than PVF's months before LOVB's first match in January of 2025. The league announced that it had raised $160 million and signed 10 of the 17 athletes on the U.S. Olympic roster in Paris. PVF declined to share its fundraising numbers. On Volley Talk, however, the online chat forum for volleyball fans, many commentators found that between the two leagues, PFV games were more fun to watch. Though its athletes may not be as well known as LOVB's, PVF's understands how to make games into spectacles, leaning more into the familiar trappings of American sports with large arenas, mascots, halftime performances, and t-shirt tosses. It holds a draft each fall for the top college players. All 8 teams have fun names like the Omaha Supernovas or the Atlanta Vibe. And in the first 2 seasons, PFV's teams played for real, material stakes. The championship game won $1 million. LOVB's champion takes home a sleek, sterling silver trophy designed by Tiffany's. It's tempting to label LOVB as its centralized model, European influences, and muted pink branding as left-coded, and PVF, an old-fashioned American sports league, as right-coded, especially when you learn that for its first couple of years, PVF was propped up by Dan DeVos, a longtime Republican backer who owns the Grand Rapids Rise with his son Cole. Mr. DeVos' sister-in-law is Betsy DeVos, who was the Secretary of Education during the first Trump administration. When two of the league's teams, one in Las Vegas and the other in Columbus, Ohio, went stretches with shaky ownership, they got their funding from Mr. DeVos. The star-making machine. Morgan Hentz, 27, who was an alternate for the U.S. Olympic team in 2024, considered joining both leagues. But PFV was starting first, and she didn't want to wait another year to play at home. "I needed a chance to make a living," she said. Ms. Hentz played in Germany after college, but the salary was low and she missed her family. In European volleyball leagues, players often receive about $20,000 along with room and board for a 9-month season. Both PVF and LOVB offer a base salary of $60,000 and more than double that for some players. Before PVF's first season, Ms. Hentz reached out to hundreds of players to pitch them on joining the nascent U.S. League. Its original founders were not volleyball people. They didn't have her connections, and Ms. Hentz was intent on making the league work. Coming out of college, there weren't opportunities to stay and play in the U.S., she said, and now that they're here, I just want it to last so badly. After Caitlin Clark transformed the WNBA with her fame, a general sense emerged that volleyball would need a star or two to achieve cultural relevance. It hasn't happened yet, but there are only 6 players on the floor at a time, so TV viewers can easily recognize each one, and a well-known but possibly uncomfortable fact about volleyball players is that they tend to have the kind of look that sells. The official indoor volleyball uniform includes short shorts, and the unofficial uniform, embraced by many, includes jewelry and makeup. Ms. Gorsline, the PVF's board co-chair, was non-committal in an interview about whether players' looks were good for business. "I don't think it's a bad thing," he said carefully. But Brooke Nunviller, a top player for the Omaha Supernovas, who has a sponsorship with a jewelry company, Gorjana, and around 180,000 followers on Instagram, was blunt about the feedback she was getting from some higher-ups. "They say we're marketable because of the way we look, because of what we wear on court," she said. A name change. One weekend in May, PFF held its playoffs and championship match in Las Vegas, as well as a summit for sponsors and owners. Derek Higgins, a sport investment advisor, had flown in from Washington to attend. He had a few girl dad contacts, like the former NBA star Patrick Ewing and Jermaine O'Neal, who thought he might be interested in investing. But Mr. Higgins pointed out the fact that there was more than one league was likely to intimidate some investors. That would have somebody who's interested in investing in volleyball maybe just watching from the sidelines for a little while, he said. In August, PVF announced a name change, Major League Volleyball, the same name as the short-lived volleyball league from the 1980s. It was the result of a summer of negotiations. The owners of the Omaha Supernovas, the most successful team in either league, had announced their intentions to start yet another competing league they were calling Major League Volleyball, with a supposed $100 million in funding. Now, though, they had agreed to merge with PVF, but under the name MLV, which everyone agreed sounded more like an established American sports league. The influx of cash meant that the league could transition to a business model that reduced its dependence on the DeVos family. Vivek Ranadavi, the chairman of the NBA Sacramento Kings, had been involved with the upstart league and would now own a team in the MLV. He was a kind of established sports executive who could help the league get to the next level. In its last big social event before the name change, MLV held an awards gala at the Hard Rock Cafe in downtown Vegas to celebrate the end of its season. There was a red carpet at the entrance and a selfie station on the terrace where the athletes took photos in their evening wear. Fran Flory, then the general manager of the Vegas Thrill, stood at the bar chatting with 3 season ticket holders. One of them, Shauna Jaramillo, 53, who works as a mail carrier, started playing volleyball when she was 9. When she heard that Las Vegas would host a professional volleyball team, she screamed and immediately bought season tickets, she said. Her wife and sister were skeptical. They thought it looked boring. But as soon as they saw their first match, they fell in love with the sport. They marveled at the speed of it, how the women hit the floor to make a save, and moments later jumped high to spike the ball. They play so well together, said her sister Denise Jaramillo, who is a full-time caretaker for their elderly parents. Shauna now designs custom thrill necklaces and pendants. The competition, to be the last volleyball league standing, shows no sign of abating. MLV has a new team in Dallas this season and plans to start teams in Minnesota, Washington, and Northern California for its 2027 season. Its All-Star Game will air on CBS next week, and LOVB is adding 3 teams for its 2027 season in San Francisco, Los Angeles, and Minnesota. Some of their games this season will air on USA Network and ESPN2. Ms. Flory said she was among a minority of volleyball people who thought that a multiple league was good for the sport. Ms. Flory's team, the Thrill, will not be playing in the MLV this season because the league couldn't find an owner. Even though she's out of a job, Ms. Flory remains excited about the future of volleyball. No one makes it professionally without competition, she said. Competition is what makes people with money commit. A Work Phone's Liberating Possibilities by Max Reed. If I had workable universal advice for lowering screen time, I'd be very, very rich. I'd also be better rested, better read, in better shape, more attentive with fewer headaches, and more fulfilling relationships. I have no idea who Clavicular is, and I'd be happier for it. Instead, what I can suggest is a confoundingly simple, albeit somewhat unwieldy solution that I think would alleviate some specific work problems. The answer is a work phone. What I mean is that you need a phone that is for work and only for work. This phone should have a number that is different from your personal phone. It should look and feel different from your personal phone so you don't confuse them. It should have whatever email, calendar, and messaging functionality your work requires and nothing else. On this phone, you would never download TikTok or Instagram, unless you were a social media manager, in which case I think it may be too late for you. If you can get away with it, you will never even download a web browser. Ideally, this phone should even be janky, slow, annoying to use. The minute you are done whatever task is required, your instinct should be to put the thing away. This is the phone that will keep you from getting fired. Now, if you're free to set up personal phone in whatever way you like. The point is to remove from your life the excuse that you need to have a big, enticing, energy-draining phone with you at all times for work. Yes, you still have to have a phone with you when you work, but it's your work phone and has none of the hypnotic magic of your current phone. The only downside to this strategy is that sometimes you will have to carry 2 phones, but the slight inconvenience of a cellular dual wielding seems like a small price to be paid for the restoration of order to your attentional life. Of course, your employer should pay for the work phone in its plan. If they need you to be reachable outside of the office hours, it should be their responsibility to cover the costs of that connection. The good news, if you're a freelancer or if your boss is stingy, is that smartphones and data plans are cheaper than ever. I'm not actually sure your problem Always a Spare Room for Artists and Grandkids by Kathleen Chalfant. 12 years ago, the stage and screen actress Kathleen Chalfant received a $20 million cash offer for her West Village home. It was an $18.5 million more than Ms. Chalfant, 81, and her husband, the graphic photographer and sculptor Henry Chalfant, spent to buy the brick townhouse in 1994. Ms. Chalfant said she knew it would be crazy not to accept the offer, so the couple sold the home and immediately began searching for a new one. Ms. Chalfant has lived and worked in New York City for 53 years. When she was raising her 2 children in an apartment on the Upper West Side, she helped found the prominent off-Broadway theater Playwrights Horizons, made her off-Broadway debut in Jealousy, and played multiple roles in the original Broadway production of Tony Kushner's Angels in America, for which she received a Tony nomination. She's in rehearsals now for The Dinosaurs, a play running through March 1st at Playwrights Horizons. The Chalfonts found their new home in Brooklyn Heights. The couple were drawn to the 5,000 square foot, 6-story brownstone built in 1843 because it offered plenty of room to host book parties and political fundraisers. It also had 6 bedrooms to put up grandchildren, friends, and artists looking for a place to stay for a few months. We have a lot of people, especially people in the theater, who will stay with us, Miss Chalfont said. The staircase is like the highway. People go up and down all day long. You've been listening to a reading of articles and features from the Sunday, February 8th, 2026 issue of the New York Times Business section. We read from the New York Times Business section every Thursday at 11 a.m. Your reader has been Jean, and thank you for listening.
Coming up next in the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service, we have today's USA Today. Following at 2 o'clock is episode number 31 of Mark Twain by Ron Chernow. Stay with us.
The following program is intended for